I'm Kyle Sardinia, and you're watching Niagara Pro Tips. Welcome back to this video series on the Niagara Cloud Suite. Today we're going to continue the discussion focusing on the Niagara Data Service Alarms API. Refer to earlier videos in this series about for more information on the required versions to utilize the Alarms APIs, as well as check out the videos on the service accounts to provide access to the NDS APIs. The Alarms API added 3 new endpoints to query the Niagara data service for the alarm records, as well as 3 new endpoints to the Controls API to interact with and acknowledge the alarms that are stored in the Niagara data service. Let's start with the documentation. So if I navigate to the Niagara Resource Center, I can see in the Niagara Cloud Suite documentation page there is a link to the API guide. Now the first thing that should jump out at you is the Alarm Service API support section that has been added. You can see now added to the API are support for alarm histories, alarm states, and alarm counts. Now, the Alarm History Controller allows us to access those history alarm records that have been uploaded to the cloud. The Alarm State Controller will respond with the last reported alarm for each record, and then the Alarm Count Controller will report the number of alarm records, and it groups them by their acknowledgement state. So what that could be unact or act or an act pending. Now, the state and the count alarm, they are simple HTTP GET, so there's no body information included, but the history controller with this endpoint for search includes a lot of options for filtering the information based on the time that it's generated, as well as information about the alarm record themselves and all of the data that's stored within the alarm data for the alarm record. Let's go ahead and take a look at some examples for these. Now, here we are again using the Postman application, and you can see here for my alarm history query, I'm executing a post message to the Cloud API. So the endpoint for alarms and customers. This customer ID we discovered earlier, but just as a recap, if you look and want to find your customer ID, you can go to the Niagara Cloud Suite homepage, and when you're on the customer, you will see in the URL that there is the number following customer there as well. And the other thing we now need for the alarms API is the device UUID. So when you're on the individual device, you can see this long string here that is unique to that device. You can also find it on the Federated Identity Authenticator view within the station, but you can find it here as well when you're on the particular device if you're in that view on the Niagara Cloud portal. Now, when searching the history controller, I can look in my query here, and I can see my operator is AND. So all of the conditions in the expression array must be true. So for here, I'm just saying that the field, the alarm generated time as part of the record, right? The operator I'm using for that is greater than, and you can include in this timestamp format. I just have greater than October 1st of 2024. So any alarms that have been generated after that is one of the conditions. I could do less than and then specify a time to give it within a certain window. I could also now, in the field is where I include that device UUID. So if I have the field to look for alarms from a specific device, so I could search the customer base, but I can limit it down to the device, and operation says this is equal to my device UUID that I imported as a variable here. So I have some other fields here, like I can restrict the size of the page, as well as sort based on the last update time in the record. So I can go ahead and if I save and then send that request and look at my result, what comes back is an an array of the alarms. So I have my device UUID. Each alarm has a unique alarm UUID, the cloud ID that's associated with that point, as well as the the act state of that alarm. Is it required? What the source is? What the alarm class I associated with? And as well as a message text, the what it transitioned to, the last update time, the alarm data. These are all variable, or these are all information within that alarm record that I can use to scale down and search for specific things. So I have another alarm ID here too. I have another alarm ID here too with records. I have multiple alarms, and I can look down in total elements. I have 7 alarms that it came back with. Now, if I want to go ahead and look back at the body and scale something down, I could include a field like, hey, what is the alarm to state? What did the actual state go to? And so I can look for the value being in the state being high limit. So if I go ahead and save and then send, I can come back and now look at my bot, and my total elements has been scaled down to 4. And now I'm just looking at records for my CO2 sensor is too high. My humidity is too high, amongst other things that are available in my alarm console. Continuing on, I can look at just the alarm state, and this is pretty simple. Now the device UUID is embedded in that URL. You still have the customer ID here, and just looking at alarms, customers, customer ID, devices, device UUID, alarms, and then that state. And you'll notice here now I'm doing a get. There is nothing included in the body, and I can just go ahead and hit send. And see that I can look for that alarm UUID, and it'll come back with the current state of that alarm and that it's required and where it is, and some of the message text is about it. So that'll show me the last alarms that were sent for each individual alarm record. Now the alarm count will actually look, and now the endpoint is alarm/count it ends with, and if I send that, it will, for each alarm, it will count the number of times that it went into an alarm record was sent and it's unacknowledged, as well as it includes the last update time, and then if it was acknowledged, it would have act in one. So these will pull in the amount of times if you're looking for information about the records and how many times it has been sent. Now going back, you could see in the documentation as well, under the control API support, there's still this link to Swagger. So if I want to look at the NDS control API that's available on the Swagger here, this will include the URLs, and you can see for the commands channel that we have the commands on acknowledge an alarm to acknowledge the alarm, commands to edit alarm data, which adds some notes to the alarm record, and then we can also have this command line that acknowledges an alarm batch. So if you're not looking at a particular station in the and you want to acknowledge multiple alarms across multiple stations, you could use this endpoint to be able to acknowledge multiple devices. So looking back, I have 2 other devices here with a few alarms that have just been generated. And what we can do is go ahead and look at, for example, this numeric writable that just is off normal, and you can see that it is unacknowledged. I can go ahead and grab this UUID that I need, and looking back into acknowledge alarm API, we're back to using the command system GUID that we get, and I can throw this in here, and the structure is built out that you can have an array set here of multiple alarm UUIDs. I'm just going to save it, go ahead and acknowledge and send that one. And we get a response back that that particular alarm has been acknowledged. Now, if I come back to my alarm console here, I can see that that numeric writable is still in an off normal state, but it has been acknowledged, and it was acknowledged by the CloudLink user here, and you can see that the acknowledgement status is set to acknowledged. Now, there's also an endpoint if I want to be able to add some notes to this via the API. So looking back at my my postman here, I can go into and send to the endpoint for edit alarm data. I can take still that, I'm going to put in that same alarm UUID, and I'm going to say, you know, something like the freezer door was still left open, and we'll send that and get a success message. And now when we look back at our alarm console in the Cloud Suite portal, we can go to the numeric writable alarm record here, and if I go down, you can see in the notes that indeed there is a note that says the freezer door was left open, and it was associated with the Cloud Suite system here, that note. Now, if I want to acknowledge multiple alarms from different devices, what I can do is back in my API testing here, I can go to the endpoint for control devices commands acknowledge alarm batch, and here the arrays are separated out by the alarm UUIDs for each individual system GUID for the unique station, but then you can actually have an additional component for more alarm UUIDs from a different system GUID. So I'm going to pull, make sure I have the correct system GUID in here, that device, and I'm going to grab the alarm UUIDs from those alarms we just generated. And I'm going to now send this off to acknowledge both of those alarms. And I get a success, acknowledged with the ID, successful is true, acknowledged with this ID, successful equals true. And I can go back into my portal. Now looking back at my portal, I can see that all these points are still indeed off normal, but they are all in an acknowledged state. And with that, you should be more comfortable using the additional APIs that we've added for Niagara data service alarms. Stay tuned for more updates from Niagara, and we'll see you next time.